Okay, we're going to start today, talking about the principles of imports. This is International Business Course 1302. Welcome. This is going to be the first of a couple of different units we're going to cover, and this is going to be the basics. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is what to expect in this lecture. So I'm going to give you a quick introduction. I want to talk to you about the syllabus. I want to talk to you about Canvas. I want to talk to you about a little activity that you're going to do online, and then we're going to do a quick lecture on Unit 1. I'm Beth Kennedy. This is my 6th year teaching at HCC in the International Business Department. I work for a company called Gartner during the day. I work in their supply chain group, and I work with oil and gas companies, working with people in their supply chain. So I work with their purchasing people, their manufacturing people, their logistics people, their customer service, their quality teams, and I help them with our advisory services. I want to talk to you a little bit about the syllabus. Everything you need to know about this class and how to make an A is written in that syllabus. It is in the same format that you see from every other class you have in HCC, so you probably are familiar with where to find pieces of information. I definitely want to encourage you to look through that syllabus so you know what to expect. This is an 8-week course. It's quick. It is a lot of content, and you need to, as I said in the introductory video, you need to make sure that you don't get behind. Everything that you need to know is in Canvas as well. I am very organized in the way that I put your assignments together in the assignments tab within Canvas. Everything is linked from the assignment. If you double click on it and you need to read something, it will say read this article, and when you click on the words this article, it will open the PDF file for you. If it's a link to a quiz or a video or something that you need to watch, everything will be there, and it's all organized by the week, so you know everything that's in week 1 is due before the end of the first week of the course, etc., all the way through. If you just work through the assignments in order, you will do great. We're going to do an activity that you will have as part of this week's assignment, and I just want to make sure you understand it's kind of a matching activity. It's a 40-point assignment, so it's worth a lot. And what I want you to do is, the directions are in Canvas, but they're not able to be put in the actual activity online. So I just want to make sure that you get to that assignment. You know it's a matching activity. You're trying to find the country on one side, click on it, and then go to the other side and identify what products you think that country is the leading global exporter of. So if you have any questions about that, just go back to the Canvas assignment and reread the directions, and I don't think you'll have any problems. Okay, so this class is called Principles of Imports. Let's talk about what an import is. An import, to import as a verb, means to bring goods or services into a country from another country or from abroad in order to sell them. So the noun of the word import is the actual item, the good or the service that's being brought in from another country so that it can be sold. I want to just give you, in case English may not be your first language, these are similar words, import and export. I want to make sure you know which one is which. Import means to bring something in. You can kind of remember that im and in are close to each other. Import means to bring it in. Export means to send something out. So if I live in the United States and a good or service is leaving from the United States to go to Mexico, that's an export. If I live in the United States and I'm buying something from Spain and having it sent to me in the United States, that's an import. So I just want to be sure you know the difference between those. You probably do, but I always wanted to start with that. You will be doing an activity and watching a short 3 or 4 minute video on comparative advantage. Be sure that you understand that. It's on the exam. Comparative advantage basically is the ability to produce a good or a service at a lower opportunity cost than another producer. So here's how I'm going to explain this to you. Am I capable physically of cutting my own lawn and edging my own grass? Absolutely. Do I do it? No. I would rather pay someone who's going to do 4 or 5 different yards on my street and do it for a reasonable price, and have that hour and a half that it would take me to do it, plus probably 30 minutes to take a shower and get ready afterward. So that 2 hours of my time, I would rather have that time to read, go grocery shopping, spend time with my family, have lunch with a friend. There are other things that I would rather do. So that is my opportunity cost. If I were to mow my own lawn, I would give up that 2 hours of time that I have available to spend on something else. So that's what comparative advantage is about. You'll watch a video and I think it'll be very clear to you by what I just said and what's in the video about what comparative advantage means. Absolute advantage is about the ability of an individual or a country or a group to be able to do something more efficiently than another individual. It will be covered in that video as well. Globalization, you'll hear this term a lot, especially I think now that we have a new administration in the United States, I think you'll hear this a lot. Globalization is about the fact that no country or few countries are able to sustain their economy and provide for their people without being more integrated with other countries and the other global economy. They cannot produce everything that they need themselves, and so they have to trade with other countries in order to get what they need to keep their citizens supplied with everything that they require. So that leads right into this slide. Why do countries import and export? So we import based on what we want and what we need. If we are addicted to coffee, coffee doesn't grow very well in the United States. And so if we want to be able to drink coffee every day, we have to do business with other countries that supply us with coffee. That is called scarcity. So that scarcity means that there is a short supply of some things. We don't make enough oil in this country to sustain the amount of usage. So oil in this country is scarce. We don't produce silk here. We don't produce, champagne. Maybe we produce Prosecco or other things, but there are things that we cannot get or that we cannot produce either effectively or at all in the United States. And so we trade with other countries because there are things that we want that we cannot get. So you need to understand the concept of scarcity. That's also on the exam. Here's some 4 categories of items that people trade. So natural resources, you've learned about this since you were probably in elementary school. Water, air, coal, iron, oil, things like that come out of the earth. Agricultural resources like lumber, grain, coffee. Things that are manufactured, so this list could go on forever, but textiles, which means cloth or fabric, things like that, washing machines, TVs, cars, all the things that are actually made in a manufacturing facility. And then there are things like technological goods. We would not have a cell phone if the cell phone had to be built in the United States. It'd be much more expensive. So all these kinds of things are examples of items that we trade. So you're going to do an activity on embargo this week as well. It's very short, but an embargo says, we have an embargo right now with one country that I can think of immediately, which is Cuba. So, and you can see in the photo there, the drawing there, but an official ban on trade or other commercial activity with a country. So this again is also a noun and a verb. So it can mean an embargo can be the actual ban. It can also mean to place an embargo or to embargo a country means that it has that ban. So these are usually done for political reasons. Sometimes they're done for human rights violations. We don't like the way that someone's treating workers or children or women in another country. We may think that a way to get them to do what we want them to do, because we spend so much money globally, is to embargo goods to their country. So we say we will not buy either any goods or a specific good from that country, in the hopes that the economic pain that causes them will cause them to change their behavior. Okay, this word is a big deal. If you type or write anything for me for this class and you spell this wrong, I'm going to count it off. I'm going to pretend like you wrote the wrong word. Tariff is 2 F's and 1 R. It is not 2 R's and 1 F. So a tariff is a tax. Excuse me. You can think about that. I put the word tax in that little drawing on the bottom of the slide. A tariff is a tax, and what it says is, if you want to ship something to the United States, we're going to put a tax on it. Sometimes it's called a duty, sometimes it's called a tax, sometimes it's called a tariff. Any of those words mean the same thing. And the purpose of it is that we want to control, through this tariff policy, how much stuff is coming into our country from other places. And the reason that we want to do that is that we want to make sure, as much as possible from an economic policy standpoint, and this is going to vary by who is in Congress and who is in the White House, but we want to say maybe we're going to put a high tariff on luxury cars. And the reason that we do that is we would rather protect our own auto industry. So the people who make Cadillacs, for example, expensive American cars are going to go and talk to their congressman and say, we don't want a bunch of BMWs, Mercedes, Lexus. We don't want those coming into our country without a tariff on them because people will buy more of them, and that will make it harder for the U.S. luxury cars to be sold. So a lot of times this is based on economic policy. And as I said, it will vary by who's in Congress. It will vary by who's in the White House. But this is part of U.S. trade policy, and it's how we control it's how we control trade, how we control how many products that compete with American-made products are brought into the United States. Global interdependence is pretty much the theme of this course. It's about international trade and the fact that most countries depend on other countries for trade to keep their citizens and their economies supplied with what they need. So it says one country depends on another country for something, and that country may depend on another country. So if country A buys something from country B uses the money that they make from that sale and buys something from country C, and it just continues on a global scale. Certain commodities, like oil is a perfect example, have created a lot of trade and economy and interdependence between countries because it's a precious commodity and the people that want it will pay dearly for it. So what can we hypothesize about this based on the activity that you are going to do about where things come from? So I'll give you kind of some answers. If we were doing this in class, I would have had you do that activity while we were in the middle of this lecture, but let's go ahead and let me just talk to you about it. You're going to find out that there are countries that don't have a lot of things to export, and because of that, they don't have a lot of money, because the way that you get money is you export something to another country and they pay you for it. Then you use the money that you get to buy the things that you need, perhaps from another country. If you don't have a lot of things to export, a lot of products to export, maybe you're not rich in natural resources like lumber or coal or iron or things like that. If you may develop a service economy. You may say, I'm going to train a workforce of software developers. I'm going to train a workforce of people who know how to prepare taxes, something like that, where you can provide a service. So if you don't have a lot to export, you have to either create something or you have to find a way to generate income for your citizenry so that you have enough money to buy things that you cannot produce in your own country. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit about Incoterms. Incoterms is this is a completely kind of different topic. I probably should put a little divider slide in here, so maybe just kind of take a second here and break. But the International Chamber of Commerce, they call that the ICC, has established Incoterms. And what the word that I want you to understand about Incoterms is that very third bullet there. It defines risk. What it says is if I get a shipment from Spain, and it's coming on a ship, and that ship sinks, who is the owner of my shipment while it's on that ship? And it all depends on Incoterms. The term that is put on the packing slip, and we're going to talk about packing slips and bills of lading in this class as well, but you're going to send a piece of paper or something electronic with the shipment, and it's going to specify when does it not be the person that sold it, and when does it become mine if I bought it. It could be when they put it, on my dock or on my front porch if it's coming to my home. It could be when it leaves Spain. It could be when it leaves the seller in Spain. It could be when it leaves the port in Spain. It could be when it lands on U.S. soil. It could be when it lands on my door. So all those things, and we'll talk through this more, but this is how that is defined. There are different Incoterms, and we'll talk about them. If you see these things starting here where it says terms, those are the Incoterms. EXW, FCA, CPT, CIP. These are the specifications that we put on something, and they are all about, if I ask you a question on the exam, what is Incoterms about? It is about defining risk. Who's responsible for buying insurance? Who's responsible for making sure that something gets to the person who bought it? And when does it become theirs? This is an example of a purchase order. Purchase order is how something is acquired by a buyer in a business setting. So if I want to buy something and I'm a business, let's say I'm going to buy a bunch of office supplies and have them shipped to me. If I'm doing it within the United States, I probably send something electronic that looks like this to whoever supplies my office supplies. They get it, they go through the order, they fill it, and they ship it to me. If it's international, it's a little more complicated. And so it has to be accepted by the person that's selling it. So I can't say, I'm going to send you a purchase order for 10 cases of paper that I'm going to pay $1 a piece for. If I'm trying to buy it and the seller says no, they're $100, they don't have to accept my purchase order. But once it's accepted, the risk is about me. If there is no specific term on here, you can see on that gray box toward the bottom, it says other comments or special instructions. If I don't tell them anything special that I need, then I get what I get. So it's very important that a purchase order is specific, especially in an international transaction. If you bought the textbook on page 25, there's a list of things that should be on a PO. I've also provided that to you in a file on Canvas. Terms and conditions are very important. You'll hear people call this T's and C's, and they talk to you. They're very important because they specify what constitutes the sale. So if I say that if the terms and conditions say that the box has to arrive with no damage, then that's important. If there are not any terms and conditions, the risk is on the buyer. Please know that. So let's talk about master purchase agreements. A master purchase agreement says, I, Beth, am going to do business with company XYZ. We're going to do a lot of business. I'm going to place orders all the time with you. So we're going to put one agreement together that has everything in it that's going to govern our relationship, so that when I write a PO, all I have to do is say on my purchase order, this is subject to master agreement, and usually they have a number, 1, 2, 3, dated February 4th, whatever the date is. And what it does is everything that's going to be consistent about our business relationship will be specified in that master agreement. Sometimes people call this an MPA or an MSA, master service agreement. Sometimes people call it just a master. You'll hear people say just a master. And so what that means is everything that's going to be about our business relationship is going to be in that agreement. And then anything that's just specific to it, one order would be listed on the PO. So for example, let's say I have 100 locations and I want to make a master agreement with company XYZ. We're going to put all those things in. But on the PO, I would say, ship this to my Houston office, ship this to my Dallas office, ship this order. So that's a PO that has a little bit different information on it, but the master agreement would have all the things that would stay consistent between us. A letter of credit, this will be on your test as well. A letter of credit is a letter from a bank saying that I'm going to buy something from you and that you're going to get paid and it's going to be on the right amount. So that if something happens and I do not pay, the bank will say, we're going to make sure that the seller gets paid. Internationally, these are extremely, extremely common because they make the risk for the buyer and the seller go down because they know that the bank is going to make sure that they get paid. This is a list of a few things I want you to know. I've covered most of these. Tariffs we talked about, please spell it correctly. Quotas say that this is another trade policy that countries can use. And what this says is the first 100 Lexus cars that ship into the United States are going to get taxed at $1. The tariff is going to be $1. But everyone after that, the tariff is going to be $500. Now, I'm using examples here. These are not the right dollar amounts. But the purpose of that is we don't want more than 100 cars from Lexus to come in because we want Cadillac to be able to sell as many cars as they can, or whatever the competing product is that the United States makes. So as a way to protect the industry in our country, we can impose a quota, and we can impose A standard. A standard says, and this is on your test too, it says it's like having a zero quota. So it's not, we're not saying that, but what we're saying is you can only sell a car with no duty in this country if it gets 75 miles to the gallon. Well, no car gets 75 miles to the gallon. That's fuel driven. If it's electric, it might. So I say this is the heart of non-tariff barriers. So we can say we don't have a tariff on your country. Stop complaining. We don't have that. But what we have done is we've made an impossible standard or a very difficult or expensive to meet standard such that it makes it hard to do business with us. Subsidies are monies that the government pays. You're going to do an activity on this that'll give you much more information about it. But subsidies are money that the government pays to an industry, often farm, agriculture, so that it evens the playing field with another country. So if Canada says we can ship a bushel of wheat to the United States for $10, we might subsidize a U.S. farmer who says it costs me $12. I want to sell it for $12. The government might give them $2 so that the pricing becomes fair. Not fair, but even. Not fair. Definitely not fair. Even. Taxation is a way to decrease demand for products that are imported into the United States. So it's an instrument of protection for the industry in the United States. This is regularly implemented by the government to make sure that particular products have a disadvantageous trade situation with the United States. The last thing we're going to cover in this chapter is the MOD Act. So this is actually called the Customs Modernization Act, and this was put in place. The idea was that if we encourage voluntary compliance with all the rules and regulations that the Customs Bureau has to regulate trade, that the trade community would be more likely to be voluntarily compliant with all the rules and all the compliance that's necessary to import and export products. It basically means that the responsibility is shared between the people who are exporting and importing and the Customs Department. And it basically assumes that importers are honest and that they're doing what they're supposed to do. You need to know the concept of reasonable care, which is something that the courts say this is what a prudent, intelligent, normally smart person would do in a given situation. So saying that you don't know something is not an excuse. A normal person, if they were importing or exporting, would learn the laws. And so that's reasonable care says a normal business person, not someone super educated like a lawyer, but just a normal, prudent business person, what would they do? All right, that's the end of this first unit. Good luck with all the rest of the assignments, and I will talk to you with our next unit.